Jonathan Pierce pushed open the glass door of his office building and stepped out into the bright morning light. He wore his usual tailored suit and polished shoes. But today the fabric felt tight, and the shine on his shoes did not match the dull ache in his chest. The city hummed around him, honking cars, hurried footsteps, distant construction noise, but inside him everything felt still and heavy. He had built a successful technology company from the ground up. He had a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, a penthouse with a private terrace, and a bank account other people only dreamed about. Yet none of that mattered when he thought about the betrayal at yesterday's board meeting, the whispering. Behind closed doors, the sense that everyone around him saw him as weak. He walked half on autopilot, half guided by the need to escape. His phone buzzed in his pocket with messages from his assistant, reminding him of meetings and calls waiting. He ignored them all. He needed a break, even if it was just a few minutes. Away from screens and numbers, the park a few blocks away had a bench under a big oak tree that he sometimes used to clear his mind. He made his way there, shoulders slumped, steps slow. When he reached the bench, he took a deep breath. The scent of fresh grass and flowers greeted him. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and sunlight dappled the path. He sat down and stared at his phone, scrolling without really looking. Every headline, every alert only reminded him how small and lonely he felt. He put the phone away and closed his eyes for a moment, listening to birds chirping. Children's laughter in the distance, a dog barking. Just as he was about to rise and return to his office, a small hand tapped his arm. He opened his eyes and saw a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with brown curls bouncing around her shoulders. She wore a bright yellow dress and red sneakers, and she studied him with big, curious eyes. He blinked, surprised to have company. The world outside his office had no room for a child, but here in the park, she seemed perfectly natural. "You look sad, mister," she said in a small voice. "Want to meet my mommy?" He hesitated. It was so simple, so honest, and it took him off guard. He swallowed and answered, I'm not sure." His voice sounded rough even to his own ears. Her curls bobbed as she gently tugged at his sleeve. "Come on," she said, smiling. "She makes the best lemonade." He glanced down at his neat suit and polished shoes, then looked around. A modest food cart stood against the far gate. It served lemonade and simple snacks. He'd driven past it 100 times, but never stopped. Now he felt drawn toward it by this little girl's confidence. "All right," he said, standing. "Lead the way." She took his hand without hesitation, and the warmth in her small palm surprised him. He followed her to the cart. A cheerful woman with tired eyes and an apron splattered with flour greeted them. She had a gentle smile and kind lines around her mouth. "This is Mr. Pierce," the girl announced proudly. "He's sad." The woman's eyes widened. "Is that so?" she said softly. She poured lemonade into tall glasses with ice cubes clinking. She handed one to the girl, who sipped it happily, then offered the other to Jonathan. "It's sweet," he said, holding the cold glass. A drop of sweat glided down the side and collected on his fingertips. "I make it fresh every morning," she said. "I'm Maria," he introduced himself, feeling awkward in his suit among her simple surroundings. His eyes drifted to her worn shoes, the tear at the hem of her coat. She noticed. "I know I don't look fancy," she said with a small laugh, "but it pays the rent." He swallowed and offered to pay for more than just lemonade. "Can I get you some lunch?" he asked. Maria shook her head. "That's very kind, but I can manage." The girl looked up at her mother with big eyes. Maria glanced at her daughter, then back at Jonathan. She bit her lip. "Thank you," she said, voice gentle. "Okay, maybe a sandwich, but just one." He nodded. They sat together on the bench. Maria unwrapped a simple ham and cheese sandwich, and her daughter munched on lemonade biscuits. Jonathan took a bite of his sandwich. It tasted ordinary, but it felt comforting. They began to talk. Maria told him about her husband who had died 2 years ago in a car accident, leaving her alone with a child. He worked as a delivery driver, earning just enough to pay bills and keep their small apartment safe. Now she worked early mornings at the bakery and afternoons here, selling lemonade to make ends meet. Some days she barely had time to rest. Some nights, she stayed up worrying she might lose her daughter's custody if she missed work or rent. Jonathan listened, surprised how honest she could be with a stranger. He thought of his betrayal at the board meeting moments ago and realized his problems, though painful, were small compared to hers. He felt a pang of guilt. He had looked down on people like Maria before, people who struggled every day, but now he saw strength in her tired smile. At one point, the little girl hopped off the bench and started playing nearby. She chased butterflies and laughed as she ran. Maria watched her with soft eyes. "She's my world," she said quietly. "Everything I do is for her." Jonathan felt a lump in his throat. He realized he had no children of his own and little connection to life outside his company. He thought of his penthouse, his boardroom, but none of it felt as real as this. Moments sitting with a single mother who poured her heart into her child, sitting on a simple bench in a big city park. They spent the next hour talking. Maria shared dreams she once had of going back to school, finishing a degree in graphic design, but bills always came first. She had sketches in a notebook at home teeny houses, poster designs, and she hoped someday she could return to that creative world. Jonathan asked to see her drawings. She smiled and said she could email them to him. When the sun climbed higher, Jonathan knew he had to go back. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gold cufflink that had fallen from his suit earlier. It was smooth and shiny, monogrammed with his initials. He handed it to Maria. "You dropped this," he said. She looked surprised. He nodded. "I think you'd like it." She ran her fingers over the smooth metal. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." He realized then that the cufflink was meaningless compared to the connection they shared. He offered her his card. "If you ever need anything," he said, "call me." She shook her head. "I won't," she said, trying to smile. "Thank you." He walked away, watching her and her daughter disappear among the trees. He felt lighter than he had all week. He knew his life would go back to board meetings and investor calls, but something inside him had shifted. For the first time in months, he felt hope rising in his chest. As he left the park and walked toward his waiting car, he glanced back at the food cart. The busy city moved around him again, but he carried the quiet strength of Maria and her daughter with him. He knew his problems were still there, but he also knew he was not as alone as he thought. The memory of those big brown eyes, the tug on his sleeve, the shy smile over lemonade, those would stay with him long after the glass was emptied. In that simple moment, he saw a new possibility, a chance to use his wealth and power, not just for himself, but for people like Maria, people whose courage and kindness made the world a better place. And so, Jonathan Pierce returned to his world of skyscrapers and stock prices, but he did not return unchanged. He carried with him the warmth of a mother's love and a child's innocent question. He carried the promise of real connection beyond the boardroom. And he carried the hope that this chance encounter in a city park would be the beginning of something much bigger than himself. Jonathan Pierce woke early the next morning with a quiet excitement he had not felt in years. The memory of the little girl's curls and Maria's gentle smile lingered in his mind. He dressed carefully, choosing a plain shirt and slacks instead of his usual suit and tie. He wanted to look less like the CEO and more like someone she might trust. He thought about the card he had given her, and he hoped she might call, but he did not want to rush things. He decided to go back to the park food cart and buy lemonade just to see her again. When he arrived, the cart was already open. A wisp of steam rose from the kettle where Maria brewed her lemonade syrup. She stood behind the counter, humming softly as she wiped down the metal surface. He approached slowly, trying not to startle her. "Good morning," he said, offering a small, genuine smile. Maria looked up, surprised. "Mr. Pierce," she said, recognition brightening her tired eyes. "Good morning." He ordered 2 glasses of lemonade and handed her a bill larger than necessary. She shook her head, but he insisted she keep the change. He carried the drinks to a nearby table and sat down. Maria and her daughter joined him a moment later. The little girl climbed onto her mother's lap, sipping her lemonade and watching Jonathan with curious eyes. "I wanted to say thank you." "Again," Jonathan said. "You did not have to let me buy lunch yesterday." Maria shrugged, folding her hands on the table. "You insisted," she said, "and I am grateful." She paused, searching for the right words. "It is not often that someone like you shows kindness to someone like me." Jonathan frowned. "That sounds unfair," he said gently. "Why do you say someone like me?" Maria glanced down at her worn sneakers, then back up at him. "I mean, I work here, selling lemonade. I have no fancy degree, no big house, no title, and you have all of that." He thought about his penthouse and his glass offices and the loneliness he had felt inside them. "Titles do not matter to me," he said. "Tell me about you. I want to know more." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath and began to speak. "My daughter's name is Lily," she said, and the girl beamed. "She is 6 years old. Her father, he died 2 years ago." Jonathan leaned forward. "I'm so sorry." Maria nodded. "Was driving home from work and was hit by a drunk driver. Lily and I were in the car behind him. We watched it happen." She closed her eyes for a moment and then opened them again, steadying herself. "After that, everything changed." Jonathan felt a tightness in his chest. He had never lost someone he loved so suddenly. "How did you manage?" She ran a finger around the rim of her glass. "I had his insurance money. It paid for the funeral and helped with some bills. But the checks ran out. I had no job. I had dropped out of school when I got pregnant, so I had no degree. I could not find work that would pay enough, so I did what I knew, baking. I got a job at a small bakery before dawn, then sold lemonade here in the park for the rest of the day. I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. Some nights, I cry myself to sleep." He felt tears blur his vision. He swallowed hard. "That is too much for one person to carry." She shrugged again, as if accepting it was the only path. "I do it because Lily needs a home. You cannot let her go hungry. You cannot let her lose this apartment. I fight every day." Lily climbed down and ran to chase a stray puppy that wagged its tail nearby. Maria watched her daughter play and then continued softly. "I had dreams. I wanted to be a graphic designer. I used to draw all the time posters, logos, little houses. I even had a scholarship to art school, but I had to choose. Chose Lily." Jonathan closed his eyes, picturing Maria as a younger woman, full of hope and creativity. "Those dreams are still inside you," he said. "I can see it in your eyes." She laughed, a small sound. "Maybe they are buried deep." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his card. "I meant what I said," he told her. "If you ever want to pursue your art again, call me. I want to help." She hesitated. "I am not sure what you want." "In return? Nothing," he said firmly. "I do not want anything from you except your friendship. I want to learn more about your art and how I can support you." Maria studied his face. She saw no hidden agenda, only genuine care. She accepted the card and put it in her apron pocket. "Thank you," she said. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan made a habit of visiting the cart. He would sit with Maria and Lily for an hour or two, listening to Maria talk about her designs, showing him sketches on her phone. He learned the names of her clients at the bakery, the flavors she tried to invent, the recipes she adjusted late at night. He met Lily's teacher and the neighbors in the apartment building. He discovered that Maria's building was old and needed repairs, that the water heater broke in winter, that the rent had gone up unexpectedly. He realized how fine the line was between keeping a home and losing everything. One afternoon, he brought his assistant with him. He asked her quietly to record a check for 3 months of rent for Maria and to arrange for a maintenance crew to fix her apartment's leaks. His assistant looked surprised, but nodded and left with the instructions. Jonathan said nothing. To Maria, he wanted it to be a true gift, unexpected and private. When Maria arrived a few days later, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a check large enough to cover 3 months of rent and a note that said only, "From someone who believes in you." She stared at it, tears welling, and she read and reread the note until the words blurred. She pressed the paper to her chest and closed her eyes, whispering, "Thank you." Meanwhile, Jonathan invited Maria to his office under the pretense of discussing a community project. He had not told her what he planned. When she arrived, she found herself in a sleek boardroom with black leather chairs and a polished table. He greeted her warmly, and as she sat, he passed her a folder. Inside were documents for a new position. Maria would lead the creative team for a corporate social responsibility initiative. She would design posters, plan events, and oversee partnerships with local nonprofits. The salary was more than she had ever earned, and the benefits included health care and tuition assistance, so she could finish her design degree. Maria stared at the papers in shock. I cannot accept this, she said, her voice shaky. I do not deserve it. Jonathan shook his head. You deserve every bit. You have talent, you have heart, and you care about your community. These are the qualities I want on my team. He slid the folder across the table. Say yes, Maria. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought of Lily and of the piles of overdue bills. She thought of the freedom she would have to draw again, to build a life beyond worry. Brr. She opened her eyes and looked at Jonathan. Yes, she whispered. He smiled, and in that moment, Maria felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She thought of the long road ahead, learning corporate structures, meeting new people, balancing work and motherhood, but she felt ready. She felt seen for the first time in years. That evening, Jonathan walked home under the glow of street lamps, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had helped not just with money, but with respect and opportunity. He remembered Maria's laugh that day in the boardroom and the proud tilt of her head when she said yes. He thought of Lily playing in the park and of how Maria's strength had moved him. He realized that true success was more than profit margins and shareholder value. It was about lifting others, sharing power, and finding purpose beyond himself. He knew there would be challenges managing a community program, navigating corporate politics, helping families like Maria's, but he felt ready as he climbed the steps to his building. He glanced back at the street where the lemonade cart had stood. The city around him was busy and loud, but inside, he felt quiet determination. He would build something new, something that mattered, and he would walk that path with Maria and Lily hand in hand, one honest step at a time. Maria's first day at the company began before dawn. She woke in her small apartment to the sound of her daughter, Lily, humming softly as she tied her shoelaces for school. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead, packed a simple lunch of sandwiches and fruit, and gently nudged Lily awake. You'll be late, she whispered. Lily blinked sleep from her eyes, gave her mother a quick hug, and ran off to catch the bus. Once Lily was gone, Maria took a deep breath and slipped into the clothes she had chosen the night before, a neat blouse, dark slacks, and comfortable flats. She smoothed her hair, tucked the sketches of her design ideas into her tote bag, and stepped out into the cool morning air. The street was quiet, and she walked with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today, she would walk through the glass doors of the high-rise building she had only ever seen from the outside. The building where Jonathan Pierce ruled with numbers and power. Inside the lobby, the marble floor gleamed under bright lights, and a waterfall of tiny streams of water cascaded behind the reception desk. She felt small as she approached. The receptionist offered a polite smile and directed her to an elevator bank reserved for executives and guests. As the elevator doors slid shut, she clutched her tote bag and recalled the moment when she had said yes to Jonathan's offer. Felt like a dream, but it was real, and she was determined not to waste it. The door opened onto a long hallway of frosted glass conference rooms. A young assistant in a tailored suit welcomed her and guided her to Jonathan's office. He stood from behind an imposing desk and greeted her with his warm, honest smile. He wore a simple shirt today, too, no tie, just a sign that he wanted this to be personal. Welcome, Maria, he said, holding out his hand. I'm glad you're here. She shook his hand and tried to steady her voice. Thank you for having me. He led her to a smaller room filled with colorful posters of past community events, photos of families, and wall maps covered in pins. This, he said with a sweep of his hand, is the outreach planning room. You and I will shape this space together. Over the next hour, he introduced her to her new team: 2 event planners, a graphic designer, and an administrative assistant. They all had impressive resumes and polished ways of speaking. Maria felt her heart flutter when she realized no one knew her story yet, just that she was their new director. She took a seat at the head of the table, unfolded her sketches, and let herself draw confidence from the lines on the page. Jonathan spoke first. Our goal is simple. We want to help families in need in our city. We'll host free workshops, distribute supplies, and create spaces where people feel safe and supported. Maria nodded and then did something brave. She stood and began to speak. She described her own experiences, allied nights without sleep, long days of styling pastries, the worry that hovered over her at every rent deadline. She told them about Lily, her bright laugh, her dreams of becoming an artist. The room fell quiet as she spoke. When she finished, she expected nods, polite applause. Instead, the graphic designer closed her laptop and said, "Thank you for sharing. Your story is powerful." That evening, Maria walked home under a fading pink sky. She thought about the workshop they would host in 2 weeks at the community center in her neighborhood. She thought about the posters she would design, bright colors, simple shapes, happy faces. She thought about how her work could help someone else the way she had been helped. A warm feeling bloomed in her chest. The next week involved challenges. Corporate processes moved slowly. Budgets had to be approved by committees that never met on time. Some executives questioned the value of spending money on small programs in unfamiliar neighborhoods. Maria sat through long meetings where she quietly took notes, then went home and drafted new proposals to answer every question, to show exactly how each dollar would change a life. She learned the meaning of ROI and stakeholder buy-in, terms she had never used in her old life. Jonathan noticed how she stayed late most nights, drafting plans by the glow of her laptop screen. One evening, he found her alone in the conference room, head resting on her arm. He brought her a cup of tea and sat across the table. She blinked at him and tried to smile. "I didn't mean to stay so late," she said. "I just want everything to be perfect." He poured sugar into his own cup and stirred. "Perfection is overrated. Impact is what matters. You are already doing great work." She looked down at the tea. "I'm not from here. I don't have a background in business. I worry I'll let people down." He leaned forward. "Maria, you have qualities we can't teach. Your resilience, empathy, creativity. You see the world in a way we don't. That is your strength." She felt tears prick her eyes. She nodded, silently promising herself to remember his words. Soon, their first event arrived. He rented a hall in Maria's building's community center. Jonathan helped set up folding tables, and Maria decorated the walls with large posters she had designed. Bright suns, open hands, families smiling. Liners went up in laundry rooms and corner shops, and soon a line formed outside the door. The hall doors opened. Families poured in, parents with toddlers clutching stuffed animals, elderly neighbors with hats and scarves, teenagers curious for free snacks. Maria stood at the entrance, greeting each person with a warm hello and handing out name tags that she had printed herself. She saw a woman she recognized from her apartment complex. The woman's eyes widened in gratitude when she realized this free event was for her own neighbors. Inside, volunteers guided families to tables where they could learn about budgeting, free health screenings, and legal aid for rent disputes. There was a table for children with crayons and coloring sheets featuring the same bright suns Maria had drawn. Lily sat at that table, coloring a picture of her mother and Jonathan standing together under a rainbow. When Maria saw it, her heart swelled with pride. Jonathan walked through the crowd, speaking with families, asking questions. He paused at Maria's side. "You did this," he said quietly. She kicked at the floor. "I had help." He shook his head. "No, you led this." That afternoon, as the hall emptied and the cleanup crew packed cartons of leftover snacks, Maria felt a joy she had never known in her old life. She helped one mother fill out a form for a small housing grant, laughed as Lily chased a balloon. Down the hallway, she watched the graphic designer posting pictures on social media and the administrative assistant organizing donation boxes. Later, back in the planning room, Jonathan led a short debrief. They reviewed what went well and what could improve. Maria noticed he listened closely to everyone, then turned to her and asked, "What do you think?" She took a breath and shared her honest thoughts. Better signage, more volunteers for children's activities, clearer schedules. He wrote notes. "We'll do it your way next time," he said. As they packed up, he turned to her. "You are making a real difference." She smiled shyly. "Thank you." After that evening, their friendship deepened. Jonathan invited Maria and Lily to a weekend family picnic at his country house outside the city. Maria hesitated. She did not want to impose, but he insisted. On a Saturday morning, they drove out along winding roads lined with green fields. Lily pressed her face against the car window, excited by the sight of cows grazing in a pasture. At the house, Jonathan's sister greeted them with homemade cookies. The house was warm and light, with wide porches and fields in every direction. Lily ran barefoot through the grass, and Maria sat on a rocking chair with Jonathan, sipping lemonade. They talked of everything from boardroom politics to favorite childhood books. Maria told him about the drawings she had lost when she moved so often. He showed her photos of his late wife's childhood art in his study. As the sun began to set, Jonathan walked Maria back to her car. "I have something for you," he said. He handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a keepsake he had found in his Attica pendant that had belonged to his wife. The metal was worn, but the engraving was still clear. 2 sisters' initials. Entwined, he watched Maria's face closely. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. "This belonged to your wife." He nodded. "I thought you would appreciate it." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, Jonathan saw tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means more than I can say." They stood there in the fading light, hearts full of new understanding. Maria knew she was part of something bigger than any one apartment or workshop. Jonathan knew that, through Maria, he had found a connection that reached beyond business. As they said goodbye, both of them sensed that their journey together was far from over, and that the secrets, waiting to be discovered, would bring them even closer. Jonathan Pierce arrived at the office earlier than usual the next morning. He felt a flutter in his chest as he remembered the wooden box he had given Maria the night before. He set down his briefcase and paused by the large window, watching the city wake up. His mind drifted back to Maria's tears when she saw the old pendant. He had chosen that gift carefully. It belonged to his late wife, Emily, and it held a secret he had barely understood until now. Today he would share that secret with Maria, but he did not know how she would react. When Maria walked into the office, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her blouse ironed, and she smiled at Jonathan as he approached. He led her to the outreach planning room, where sunlight streamed through tall windows. He closed the door softly behind them, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph. He handed it to her without a word. Maria looked at the photo and froze. It showed 2 young women laughing, side by side, one with curly brown hair like hers, the other with straight blonde hair. At first, she thought it might be a random snapshot, but then she saw the familiar initials on the locket the blonde woman wore. It was the same engraving that Maria had traced on the pendant Jonathan had given her. "Where did you get this?" Maria asked in a small voice. Jonathan took a deep breath. "This is my wife, Emily, with her sister." Her name was Clara. Maria's eyes widened. "That can't be." "My name is Maria Clara Torres." Jonathan nodded, voice trembling. "Emily never told me she had a sister. After she passed away, I found letters and old photos in her things. One letter mentioned her sister, but she didn't say much. I didn't know how to find you. I thought the pendant might lead me to you." Tears welled in Maria's eyes. She stared at the photo, then at the small engraving on the metal. "Emily and I were separated when we were babies," she whispered. "I was adopted by another family. I never knew she married, or that she lived here." Jonathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have shared this sooner. I didn't want to burden you with the past until I was sure." Maria turned to face him. Her eyes shone with emotions, sadness, confusion, hope. "This changes everything," she said softly. "Emily was everything to me. She was my best friend. I have missed her every day." Jonathan guided her to a chair. He sat beside her and told her everything he had learned, how Emily's family had lived in a small town, for her parents died in an accident when the girls were very young, how Emily had been raised by her aunt and uncle, while Clara had gone to foster care and later to adoption, how Emily had written letters searching for Clara but never found her, and how Emily had treasured the pendant as the last link to her sister. Maria listened and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When Jonathan finished, a quiet settled between them. Then Maria spoke, her voice steady. "I want to meet her family," she said. "I want to know about Emily's life here. I want to bury our parents together if they have a resting place." Jonathan's own eyes filled with tears. "My lawyers can help with the records," he said. "We'll find their graves. I want to do this with you, Maria. I want us to be family." She placed her hand on his. "I felt so alone," she said. "Even when I was doing well, something was missing. Now, I know why." They spent the next hour making plans. They would travel to Emily's hometown over the weekend. Jonathan arranged for his assistant to book the flights in a rental car. He told Maria she would have time off work and promised the community program would run smoothly without her for a few days. When Maria left the office, her mind was racing. She felt a mix of excitement and fear. She thought of Lily and how she would explain this journey to her 6-year-old daughter. She thought of the tiny house she had drawn so many times in her sketchbook, a picture of 2 sisters side by side under a roof. She realized that house could become real. That evening, Maria sat at her kitchen table with Lily beside her. She showed Lily the photo of the 2 sisters in the old pendant. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder. "That's you and Emily?" she asked. "I think so," Maria said. "Emily was my sister. We didn't grow up together, but now I have a chance to find her story." Lily leaned her head on Maria's shoulder. "I want to meet her too," she said. "I want to know about my aunt." Maria hugged her daughter tight. "We'll go together," she promised. The next morning, they set off for Emily's hometown. The drive was long and peaceful, with rolling fields and old barns between the city and the small town. Maria held the pendant in the car, turning it over in her hand. Jonathan drove, glancing at her in the passenger seat, sharing the silent excitement of discovery. Their first stop was the town cemetery. Jonathan led Maria to a quiet corner where the stones were old and worn. He found a ledger in the office with the names of her grandparents. They located a simple gravestone inscribed with their names and the dates of their birth and death. Maria knelt before the stone, laying a small bouquet of daisies she had picked along the road. "I never knew them," she whispered, "but I feel them with me now." Jonathan stood behind her, and together they stood in silent respect. After a few moments, Maria stood and took his hand. They walked back to the car and headed to the Historical Society, where a kind librarian helped them find old town records. They discovered Emily's childhood home had once been at the edge of town, but it was gone now, torn down years ago. Yet in old newspaper clippings, they found stories of a little blonde girl named Emily playing in the yard, her laughter echoing through the pages. There was a photo of young Emily holding a puppy, and Maria felt a lump in her throat when she saw her sister's bright eyes. "They look so happy," Maria said, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jonathan came close and wrapped an arm around her. "They were," he said, "and we'll remember that." They spent hours looking through records, and late in the afternoon, the librarian handed Maria a folded letter. It was written in Emily's handwriting, a letter to her sister Clara, promising that one day they would find each other. Maria unfolded it carefully and read the words Emily had written so many years ago. "My dearest Clara, I hope you are safe and loved. I think of you always and pray that one day we will be together. Love, Emily." Maria folded the letter and pressed it to her heart. She felt closer to Emily than ever before. She looked at Jonathan and smiled through tears. "She never gave up," she said, "and now neither will I." They would bring Lily to the graves again after a proper ceremony. They would find any other family records, maybe cousins or distant relatives. They would share stories of Emily with Lily, so she would know her aunt. As dusk fell, they returned. To the city, the skyline glowed, and the busy streets welcomed them back. Maria felt different, lighter, hopeful, complete. She realized that the chance meeting in the park had led to so much more than a charity program or a job. It had led her back to her roots, back to her sister, back to herself. At night, Maria placed the letter and the pendant on her bedside table. She looked at Lily sleeping peacefully in the next room and whispered, "Good night, Emily. I will find you soon." And for the first time in her life, Maria felt that she truly belonged. She was not just a single mother working hard to get by. She was Clara Torres, sister of Emily, and soon she would be reunited with the memory and legacy of the sister she never knew. The secret of the pendant had brought them together, and now nothing could keep them apart. Jonathan woke before dawn again, though his mind buzzed with excitement rather than worry. Today was the day Maria and he would host the big citywide event celebrating the launch of their outreach program. It would be their largest gathering. So far, with hundreds of families expected and dozens of partner organizations joining in, he dressed in a crisp shirt and slacks, but he paused as he slipped into his shoes. His thoughts drifted to Maria and how far she had come. He felt proud knowing that this event was her vision as much as his. At her apartment, Maria stirred Lily awake with a gentle kiss on the cheek. "Big day today," she whispered. Lily's eyes shone as she jumped out of bed. Maria dressed her in a bright dress and tied back her curly hair. She packed snacks in her little backpack and slipped on comfortable shoes. Then she tucked the old pendant around her neck. Next to a new charm, he had given her a small heart with the initials E&C. Maria looked in the mirror and caught her own reflection. She felt strong, hopeful, and ready to lead. The program had grown faster than she ever imagined. They now had a small office with a few staff members, and volunteers came regularly to help families with food, rent advice, healthcare, and even art classes for kids. She thought of the first workshop in the community hall, and how nervous. She had learned so much since then, how to speak in front of crowds, how to handle problems when they came up, and how to trust herself. Jonathan met them outside and greeted Lily with a high five. He shook Maria's hand and handed her a clipboard with the final schedule. "Everything looks perfect," he said. Maria smiled and nodded, feeling butterflies in her stomach. It was real now, no more sketches and small events. Today it was. A city park filled with tents, tables, and bright banners she had designed. Her art shone everywhere, on posters showing happy families, on the backs of volunteer shirts, on the covers of information booklets. As people began to arrive, Lily ran off to help a group of children with balloon animals made by a local artist. She giggled as she twisted colorful balloons and handed them out. Maria and Jonathan walked among the tents, greeting families. They met a mother who had come to get help with rent, and to veterans who wanted to volunteer their time. They met an elderly man who needed company, and children who wanted to paint. Everywhere they looked, people smiled and thanked them. Maria felt tears of joy sting her eyes. At noon, Jonathan stepped onto a small stage with a microphone. The crowd quieted down. He wore a simple shirt and held his notes in one hand. Maria stood beside him, holding Lily's hand. Jonathan began to speak in a clear, steady voice. "Thank you all for coming. Today is a celebration of community, of compassion, and of hard work. This park is filled with people who believe that every person deserves help when they need it. This program started when I met Maria and Lily in this very city. I saw their courage, their kindness, and I knew I wanted to do something meaningful. Maria, standing here, showed me that true leadership comes from the heart." Maria felt warmth flood her chest. She remembered the day she met Jonathan, sitting at that food cart under the oak tree. That day led to everything she had now: a job she loved, a program that helped families, a circle of friends and volunteers, and a new sense of purpose. She squeezed Jonathan's hand and looked at the crowd's faces, faces full of hope and gratitude. He continued, Maria's creative vision and commitment changed my life, and now she is changing thousands of lives across our city. Let's give her a round of applause. The crowd erupted in cheers. Maria stepped forward, tears in her eyes. She took the microphone and spoke in a firm but trembling voice. I want to thank Jonathan for believing in me and all of you for being here today. When I first started, I was a single mom with no money and no clear path. I only had my dreams and my daughter. Now we have each other and we have this community. This program is for you and it will grow with your help. Together we can lift each other up and make this city a place where no one feels alone. Crowd clapped and some people waved. Lily ran back to her mother and hugged her. Maria picked her up and spun her around. She felt a deep pride that she had not known until now. This moment was more than she ever imagined, more than she hoped for. After the speeches, the event continued with food, music, and activities. A local band played songs that made people dance. Food trucks served free meals to families. Children painted murals under the guidance of volunteers. A group of doctors offered free checkups. A small library tent let visitors borrow books. Everywhere Maria looked, she saw joy and connection. Around mid-afternoon, a gentle voice called her name. She turned to see Jonathan holding an envelope. He handed it to her. This came for you, he said softly. She opened it and pulled out a letter. It was from a foundation that had heard about their work and wanted to give a large grant to the program. The letter praised their efforts and promised funding for the next 2 years. Maria's mouth fell open. She looked up at Jonathan, tears welling. This means we can reach more people, she said. We can help families in other neighborhoods. Start art classes for teenagers, offer counseling, and maybe even open a second office. He smiled and hugged her. You deserve this, he said. Your work is changing lives. Now it can change more. They stood there together listening to the music and watching families laugh. Maria felt a rush of gratitude for Jonathan's support, for Lily's love, for every volunteer and partner who believed in their mission. She thought of her sister Emily and how she would have been proud of her hard work and compassion. Reached into her pocket and touched the pendant, remembering the moment she learned her secret family connection. As the sun began to set, the park glowed in golden light. Maria walked to the edge of the field and looked out at the city skyline. She saw the tall buildings, the streets bustling with cars, the lights starting to twinkle in windows. She realized how small her world had been before and how big it had grown now. She thought of her apartment on the edge of town where she once worried about rent and bills. She returned there each night to a place filled with art supplies and plans for the next workshop. She thought of Lily, who would one day grow into a woman who knew she was loved and supported by a community Jonathan found her and stood beside her. He held her hand and looked at the sky. You've built something lasting, he said, and we'll keep building together. Maria leaned against him and smiled. I never thought a chance meeting would lead to this, she whispered. He kissed her forehead. Life has a way of surprising us, he said. Later, after the crowds had gone and the tents were packed away, Jonathan and Maria sat on a bench under the oak tree where it all began. Lily curled up between them, tired but happy. The night was quiet and the park felt peaceful. Jonathan handed Maria a small notebook. Inside were sketches of new event ideas and notes from volunteers. He told her he wanted her to lead every aspect of the program, and he would support her in every way. Maria opened the notebook and saw plans for mobile clinics, art fairs, and summer camps. She saw her own handwriting mixed with Jonathan's. Neat notes. She closed it and looked at him. Thank you, she said softly, for everything. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for giving me a reason to care beyond business, he said. You've made me a better person. Maria rested her head on his shoulder, and Lily's breathing was slow and even as she slept. The moon rose above them, casting silver light across the grass. Maria thought of Emily's letters and how her sister's love guided her even when they were apart. She felt that love now, in every kind word, every helping hand, every smile in the crowd, in that quiet moment. Maria knew she had truly found her place in the world. She was a sister, a mother, a leader, and a friend. She had discovered strength she did not know she had, and she had built something that would last. And when she looked at Jonathan and Lily, she saw the future, a future bright with promise, community, and love, as they left the park. Hand in hand, Maria whispered, "This is just the beginning." And Jonathan and Lily smiled, ready to walk that path with her, together, one step at a time.